Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of our Thrive in China Roundtable. We are on our last roundtable for 2023, but be assured we already have our topics lined up for starting January 2024. For those of you that are new to the roundtable, what we do is every week we come up with a new topic that we know is relevant either for the time period that we are in or is relevant based on new laws or regulations that have popped up, whether it be in Hong Kong or whether it be in China. Today's topic we're going to be looking at is corporate administration in China and what you need to be thinking about to make sure that you are staying in compliance for 2024. If you are new to this roundtable, it always helps to understand a little bit the background of our audience. So if you are a newbie to China, if you're a startup in China, if you're an experienced China hand, let us know. My colleague Joe is also following up with all of you that are in the community to understand a little bit of your background. This always, again, helps us to tailor-make our roundtables, especially for those that are coming up in 2024. If you don't know who I am, let me introduce myself. My name is Christina Kohler-Colucci. I'm the head of business advisory here at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. I'm a leading expert on inbound investment into China. I've been doing this for over 20 years now, basically within the corporate administration world. We help foreign investors come into the Hong Kong and Chinese market. We help these companies with their market entry strategies. We help implement the business models that would suit them best. And then we focus on growing and scaling those operations, always keeping in the back of our minds, compliance, compliance, compliance. Something that most companies don't want to focus on, ultimately. If you have not received it, this is our last offer. We are offering everybody in the community a free copy of our ebook, The 10 Biggest Mistakes Companies Make in China. Email me before the 31st of December. Happy to give you a free ebook. Email me at christina@woodburnglobal.com. So let's get cracking. This is, again, like I said, the last roundtable of 2023. Today, we're going to be looking at how to prepare for the corporate administration of your China business for 2024. We're going to be looking at 4 key points today. One is legal compliance and regulatory changes, market analysis and adaptation, relationship building and networking, and technology integration and innovation. Now, the idea is that by focusing on these key aspects, your China business can proactively prepare for 2024 and ultimately prepare for a successful operation, i.e. the foundation of what you're looking to do in the Chinese market. We will be finishing off today's presentation on why we should be all doing this. I'm not going to start off with it. I'm going to give you your checklist of what you should be doing, but I do want people to remember why we should be focusing on this, and I will touch on that at the end of today's presentation. So let's look at the first point that we're looking at today, which is legal compliance and regulatory changes in China. And I'm going to give you a bucket list of, I forget how many, I believe it's like 6, 7 slides of different things you should be checking out. Again, guys, remember, for every company that is in China, depending on your industry and sector, some of these may not apply, some of these may apply. I just want it to be put onto your checklist to make sure it gets done, right? And to make sure you have a review. So let's start for the first one. The first one is staying informed on regulatory changes. Now, regularly monitoring changes in your industry and sector in regards to what is happening in China is fundamental, okay? In addition to that, not only should you be looking at the industry-specific regulations, but you should also be looking at changes in corporate regulations, tax regulations, labor regulations, customs regulations, state administration of foreign exchange regulations, banking regulations, etc., because that will affect the day-to-day operations of your business, okay? Now, there are a number of ways you could do this. One is you can get subscribed in your city to the Ministry of Commerce website. They always upload on a daily basis their newest regulations and updates. Just note it's all in Chinese. If you if that doesn't interest you, then obviously you can go to legal professionals, corporate services firms like Woodburn, who specialize in this on a day-to-day basis. You can get subscribed to thousands of different newsletters that will highlight all of these latest trends, regulations, updates, etc. The key thing that I want to point out here is, how do these changes affect your business? Okay, some of these changes won't affect you at all. They'll be industry specific. Some of these changes may affect you depending on the location that you're in. Some of these changes may affect everybody that is within China. The key is understanding how these changes are going to affect you. Now, as an action point, one thing that I have highlighted is, do you have an operational system whereby you can check in with somebody to obtain these regulatory updates? Or ultimately, if you see that there is a regulatory update that may pertain to you, do you have a check-in person that you can talk to understand how that might apply to you? Now, again, with all of this, Woodburn can help you. So I just want to highlight that. We are a corporate services firm that does that. But if you have retained a lawyer in China, that is also the job of the lawyer. A disclaimer that I am saying for everybody in my profession, it is really, really, really hard for us to go individually to every single client to tell them when there is an update, okay? Normally, what happens is when there is an update, we implement it straight away if it pertains to you, because we've gotten a phone call from one of the government offices to say, now is the time to implement. It is up to you to make sure you get updated. And if you do have any questions, approach your legal counsel, approach your corporate services firm, whomever, to understand how it may impact you. All right. The second one is, hold on, let me see if the slide changes. The second one is updating on corporate governance policies, okay? So it's really important to review, update your corporate governance policies in your organization. Another term for corporate governance policies is standard operating procedures. I would hope that many of you have methodologies within your organization, operating procedures within your organization, governance procedures within your organization. You need to do reviews and audit this regularly based on if there are any changes, like I mentioned earlier, or if they're just generally international or local best practices. But it is important, first of all, to figure out, do you have them, right? Do you have standard operating procedures in place? How are you going to communicate these to your employees if there are changes in them? For me, I generally ask my employees to sign off that they've read, understood these guidelines. It's absolutely fine from my perspective if in the first 1 or 2 times they're trying to get familiar, they might make mistakes, they might forget. But it's important in order to implement these standard operating procedures that there is somebody checking and guiding them along the way, right? We want the whole team to know whenever there are updates in the standard operating guidelines. So like I said, as an action point, have you done an internal audit to check that you do have standard operating guidelines? Do they exist? Do they need to be amended based on updated policies? How will you communicate this with your employees? And one question I forgot to outline here is, how are you going to execute it to know that the employees are going to fulfill that policy, right? That guideline. The third one that we're going to look at is auditing your financial and accounting practices. Now, I do not mean doing the official year-end audit that is required by the various government bureaus. What I mean is doing an internal audit on the accounting and tax practices within your organization, okay? Accounting practices can mean everything from how you do your VAT invoicing. So a new standard operating procedure for us in 2023 was EFAPYAOs. How do we manage EFAPYAOs? Who's in charge of the EFAPYAOs? Have we given back the original FAPYAOs to our tax bureau? Do we have our standard operating guideline in place with this new update? How is it affecting our accounting? How do we then communicate with customers? How do we then communicate with suppliers about obtaining FAPIAOs and issuing e-FAPIAOs, etc.? So this has been a thing for us for 2023. Everybody that's based in Shanghai, it's been an issue for them too, updating this methodology within their system, okay? Now, you can obviously engage with a local accounting firm. Alternatively, if you have your own in-house finance team, this is what they need to be doing. The e-FAPIAOs is just one example, perfect example for 2023, but you obviously need to look throughout your company whether there are any other changes. We've had now 2 clients this year migrate to the SAP system. It has been completely chaotic. One of the goals for December 2023 is doing a review. Where are the challenges? I mean, we do this every week with them, but it's really doing an overall view to say, is the information now migrated? 2023 was the testing phase. Is it possible that January 1st, 2024, SAP will be used from now on, right? So if you are updating your ERP systems and things like that, that is something you should also be looking at. We also actually had a client last week send over their entire financial team from HQ to China to do an internal audit. One of our functions was to sit with this team to explain how the ERP system works in China, how the tax system works in China, who is responsible for what. We went through the entire workflow with them in order for them to make sure they realize that everything is in compliance. They also then had meetings internally within their organization about who handles what in terms of paperwork, administration, etc. So this is something very few foreign businesses do. Although it is extremely intense, they came for 5 full working days. It is a perfect way to review your China subsidiary and to understand and know how everything is working. Okay, so my action point here is, have you thought about doing an internal audit with your own China subsidiary to understand from a financial and accounting practice perspective how everything works? And then to also communicate with your accountants if any changes have to be made. The next one is understanding taxation policies. So this kind of goes hand in hand with the previous ones. I'll use e-FAPIAOs again as an update. You obviously need to keep abreast of changes in the tax laws, tax policies. When are certain beneficial policies going to end? Can you still maintain those policies for your own company? Have you hit within your organization certain thresholds? For example, if you are currently a small scale taxpayer, have you hit a revenue of 5 million RMB, which is usually the trigger for you to switch to become a general taxpayer? Have you planned this out? It's really working to optimize your tax structure within your organization. We want to avoid tax evasion. We're looking at tax optimization, and it's really doing a check within your company that you are truly optimizing all the various tax policies that could be applied to you. All right. So one thing I wanted to put as an action point again is, are you up to date with the regulatory tax updates? If you have this knowledge level, then obviously you can be proactive and forecast better. Something I also recommend doing every few years, particularly as your company grows and scales, is do a structural review of your organization. Does it still make sense to have that shareholder? Is the internal corporate management structure of your organization still making sense? It might be good to do this structural tax review between HQ or shareholder and your China subsidiary to see whether anything needs to be optimized. Okay. This is something that doesn't have to be done on a yearly basis. It really depends if you're growing, if you're profitable, how do you want to review that and just see whether changes have to be made. The next one is looking at employee compliance and relations, right? It's obviously understanding the Chinese labor laws, understanding that you have your employment contracts in place. Do your employment contracts have to be renewed? It's also looking at Holiday schedules, have all the holidays been taken by the employees? Is anything going to roll over into 2024? Are you looking at bonuses? Are you looking at 13-month compensations? Are you looking at allowances? It's just doing basically a review, an internal audit within your own company to make sure you have all the paperwork there, all the memos there about salary increases, bonuses, commissions, etc. And just making sure you are okay. So just so you guys are all aware, I do this to my own company. This year, we did an extensive audit in September. We looked at everything from service agreements with clients, so customer contracts. Does anything have to be updated, renewed, extended, etc.? It was looking at employment issues, anything coming up there. It was looking at our trademark registrations, anything needs to be updated there. It was looking at our company licenses, does anything have to be updated there? So it's really important, just not only with employee compliance, but looking at all areas of corporate governance, from trademark registrations to business license and any additional licenses you might have. Are they up to date and are they reviewed, etc. Right? So making sure you have that internal audit readily available. The next one is cultural sensitivity. So we are in a stage now in China where the borders are open, okay? What we have noticed is that during the pandemic, there was a bit of cultural insensitivity that we noticed amongst our clients. I'm not forcing anybody to do something. I just want people to be aware of this cultural sensitivity issue. And if there's anything I would say about offering training, it's to say, have you thought about offering training for employees in your HQ to understand a little bit better the cultural dynamics of working with a Chinese subsidiary and working with Chinese employees, dealing with Chinese customers, dealing with Chinese suppliers, dealing with the whole China supply chain? Does training need to be required? I will also say, do you need to provide cultural sensitivity training for your China team to reversely understand the cultural dynamics of your organization? Okay. Of course, you can talk about the country where you're from, but most organizations are so international. But sometimes the local subsidiary is not aware of what the company's philosophy is, motto. So there's a lot that I talk about in terms of cultural sensitivity. It's not just the dynamics of customs and expectations and whatnot. It's also about, what's your company ethos? What's your company philosophy? And how do you want to instill that into your China operation? So evaluate whether this is needed. A lot of people probably won't spend their budget on this. I think it's something that is a long-term investment for your organization. And if your goal is to be long-term in the Chinese market, it's important. The next one and the last one for this chapter is risk management. Now, with the way the world looks right now, with the amount of wars that are going on, trade tensions that are occurring, I think it's really important to continuously assess and update your risk management strategies. Looking again at regulatory risks, geopolitical risks, economic risks, and just understanding how this might affect your China subsidiary. I'll leave it at that. I just want people to be aware of it. So chapter 2 is looking at market analysis and market adaptation. Now, market analysis and adaptation are critical components of successfully managing your business in China, okay? And there are several areas that I want to touch on. Now, all of these things do not have to be done this year. This is just a full checklist for you to understand. You know, in 2024, I am doing a benchmarking of my competitors, fees. I do this every 2 to 3 years to get familiar with the market. So I want you all to be aware that this is something that is continuous throughout your China journey. And I've just listed everything out here. So local market research would be conducting thorough research to understand the dynamics of the local market, consumer behavior, consumer preferences, purchasing patterns, identifying your target audience, tailoring your products or services to meet their specific needs. Now, obviously, this is geared towards people that are selling into the Chinese market, right? Competitor analysis is looking at your competitor landscape. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How can you differentiate from them? Something, again, that I'm planning on doing this year. Again, consumer trends and preferences is something that everybody is talking about on a daily basis. So finding this information is not hard. The question is, are you actually doing it, and are you executing off of that information? So looking at shopping habits, looking at communication channels, looking at expectations on services and products, adapting your marketing strategies to fit these new trends and these new preferences. Excuse me. E-commerce and digital marketing. 11/11, I haven't heard great things about the event. I've heard clients being quite disappointed by it. Do you need to do a review of your e-commerce strategy and your digital marketing strategy? Right? The goal is to leverage the e-commerce landscape in China. It is one of the largest and most dynamic globally, right? Do we have the right digital marketing strategy? Are we on the right e-commerce platforms? Are we going to do 11/11 again next year? These are all things that you need to think about if you are a brand using that sector. Localizing your marketing strategies, right? Localizing your marketing materials, including websites, advertising, promotional content, will probably resonate better with your Chinese audience. Are you doing that? Are you working with local marketing agencies to help you do that? It's all up in the air, right? Distribution and sourcing channels. Now, I'm going to put these two together because there are always unique challenges, and there's always going to be unique opportunities associated with distributing your products or services in China, as well as sourcing and manufacturing your products in China. Do you need to explore new partnerships? Do you need to have a backup of partners? Do you need to find new distributors? Do you need to find new manufacturing entities in order to find better pricing? Evaluating your channels is critical to stay up to speed and to be efficient within China. Don't get lazy. Those are two fundamental points. And probably this is where companies place a lot of focus versus everything else. But again, I'm highlighting this as just something as part of your checklist. Number 8 is adaptation to regulatory changes. We already touched on that in the previous chapter. Customer feedback and engagement, talk to your customers. Don't be shy of communicating with them and communicating with them brashly, right? You want insights from them on how to improve. Everybody's goal should be to improve in China. So make sure you're looking at that. Supply chain optimization. Optimize your supply chain, obviously, to meet the demands of the local market. A lot of clients of mine are now looking at, instead of bringing product in, to start either packaging locally in China, potentially manufacturing locally in China. So think about how you can enhance your supply chain overall. Having an agile business strategy will allow you for quick adaptation, right? In China, something that you should all think about having is an agile business model. Reassess your business plan regularly, right? Based on all the other points I highlighted, based on market trends, customer feedback. You need to be agile and adapt and pivot as quickly as possible. And if anything, guys, COVID taught us this, okay? The next is obviously government relations, sorry. Not everybody needs to know everybody in the government, but if you are in a specific industry or sector, it might be good for you to have that communication with the various authorities. And cultural intelligence is something that we touched on earlier as well. Now, remember, the Chinese market is diverse. Strategies that work in one region may not be equally as effective in another. You've really got to regularly assess the Chinese market. Our goal is to consistently scale operations grow in the market, but at the same time, we constantly want to be competitive and ultimately be successful. So this is another piece of homework, right? And obviously in these 4 chapters we're looking at, you've got to prioritize, okay? Let's face it. Chapter number 3 is relationship building and networking. For me, what is fundamental in China is building up an ecosystem of individuals and partners that are going to help you to grow and scale. I have some of my partners that are on speed dial. I have some of my partners where I just maintain the relationships, wish them a happy new year. You never know when these people are going to become useful to you, right? So we're near the year end, almost also to Chinese New Year. It is a great opportunity right now to reevaluate your contact list. Do you want to refresh your partnerships? Do you want to maintain relationships? Do you want to find new people to bring into your ecosystem? Are you sending out your people locally to go to events? Are you also part of the international community where you can learn from one another? It's really, really important to be consistent and build momentum when thinking about your ecosystem in China. This is a homework piece that should be on your priority list. Now that it's Christmas, who says you can't send a broadcast message to your entire WeChat contact list to wish them a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and to send it a second time for Chinese New Year, and see who responds back, start conversations, and see who can potentially be a significant partner for you in 2024. The last point we're going to look at is technology, integration, and innovation. And most companies are not IT experts, but I bring it in because we are in a world in China of digital innovation. And one comment I got from a client recently when he was in China during 11/11 and the FHC trade show was, he said, I'm not in that headspace of how digital China is, and I can't keep up with it. And I'm at an age where I don't know if I could even keep up with it, because it's not like that in the West. I think it's really, really important because of that landscape in China of how technologically advanced everything is from app perspective and from a day-to-day living perspective, that it's important to reevaluate your business. 2023 has been a year where I have read nonstop articles on data protection, on individual data rights, and ultimately on cybersecurity. So again, keep up to date on that. I'm not an IT expert whatsoever, but I do rely on my outsourced IT provider to give me updates, or I check in with him every month to just say, is there anything I need to implement? Anything you think that I have to get into my business that you think will make us remain compliant? I outsource our whole IT business to IT experts. So it's important for me to keep up to date on that, right? You do also want to have cybersecurity measures in place. Being frauded and being conned happens quite often. So you want to make sure that if you have sensitive information, the first sensitive information that you have is employee information. You want to make sure there's a protection firewall method in there. So again, have you thought about doing an internal audit within your China subsidiary in relation to this? The next is adapting to technological change, right? With technological advancements, digitalization, you have to stay competitive. Do you need to make your company more technologically oriented? How will this affect you in 2024 if you implement it? How much is it going to cost you? And again, it's just thinking, have you thought about doing an internal audit to see whether these changes apply? A great way of checking what is happening in the market is, again, to do benchmarking and IT benchmarking on your competitors to see what they're doing and how you compare and whether you have to update yourselves. Okay. Now, we're going to hit on corporate administration in 2024. Why? Right? What is corporate administration and why is it important? So, and I wanted to finish on this with you because I think the consensus for everybody is that corporate administration is paperwork and bureaucracy, and who likes that? I do, it's my day-to-day business. But most people don't want to focus on this at all. Okay, so I do want to finish off today emphasizing what it is and why you should be doing it. Okay, so corporate admin, also referred to as corporate governance, is the system by which companies are directed, where they are controlled, and where they are held accountable to their stakeholders. So it encompasses practices, policies, processes that guide the way a company operates and interacts with its various shareholders. Okay, but not just shareholders. Also how it interacts with employees, how it interacts with customers, how it interacts with suppliers, how it interacts with third-party organizations, right? Now, the primary objective of corporate administration is to ensure transparency, clarity, accountability, and most importantly for China, ethical behavior. Okay? And for me, there are a number, oops, sorry, let me go back. That went a bit too far. Let me go back one more slide. For me, there are a number of reasons why you should be looking at your corporate administration. One is board of directors, right? The board of directors play a crucial role in overseeing the company's management, setting strategic objectives, making decisions that align with the interests of the shareholders. But you've got to make sure that the implementation of those decisions corresponds to, hold on, I'm going back again. Sorry. There we go. Corresponds to what you're looking for. Corresponds to looking how you can then grow and scale, but making sure you're doing it in an ethical way. The next one is shareholders' rights. Shareholders are the investors. They need to know what's going on in the business. They have the full accountability of the business. They have made the decision to set up in China. They need full transparency and disclosure about what is going on within the business. There has to be ethical conduct, and by ethical conduct, I mean you need to follow PRC regulations. Okay? And ultimately, then you also have to look at risk management, like we had mentioned earlier, right? All of this is equally important. Corporate governance is ultimately setting up internal controls, standard operating guidelines, okay? And understanding what are the stakeholders' engagements in those internal controls, how are you going to have them read, understand, and then execute on them. It's looking at compensation and incentives. You got to motivate your people. In China, we're also looking at corporate social responsibility and sustainability. We're also looking at the China social credit system. Is your company in good standing? Because if you are going to have a client do a background check on you, they're going to do that within the website of the COC or MOFCOM, and therefore you want to have a good credit rating. You need to have compliance procedures. And then obviously, last but not least, you need to audit and keep your company accountable. All right. Now, although last week was really intense with this one client, I think they went back knowing exactly what is happening within China. And for them, since 2019, they haven't done that because of COVID. So you have to imagine 4 years of just emails and phone calls back and forth versus physically being on the ground and seeing the documentation for themselves. Internal audits are fundamental and vital for the business. Again, I'm not saying you have to do it every year. You can do it every couple of years, but they really, really are important. Now, let's finish off today with why, right? Corporate administration is crucial for building and maintaining trust among all of the stakeholders. Again, shareholders, employees, customers, suppliers, third-party agents, right? Not only do you want to attract further investment into China, but you also want to have a long life in China. You want this longevity that's going to bring success to the organization. Okay. Standard corporate administration can be seen by customers, suppliers, employees as roadblocks to success because it entails so much due diligence. I have certain clients where when they become my client, they have to do a due diligence, or I have to fill out these forms where they then do a due diligence on me in order to then get my invoices paid. And sometimes this due diligence can take up to 2 months. And, I'm the first one to say, what a pain in the butt. But I completely understand why they're doing it. I would probably say just the amount of time it takes is wrong. You're going to lose customers and suppliers if you don't increase the speed on that. But it's really, really important to have this compliance. The key is making your clients, suppliers, employees understand why you're doing it. Okay. The reason why you're doing it is to protect the business. You want to protect the image of the company, the reputation of the company. You want to make sure that you don't get into a situation where most people fail. Like most people don't implement this, and so they hit a roadblock and they fail in the Chinese market. Okay. You want to secure your future in the Chinese market. You have to have these effective governance practices in place. And I will be honest with you, over time, with trust and loyalty, you have to be more flexible with these governance practices to make your employees happy, but also to just make your company more efficient. I want to finish off today by just saying and concluding, I have a lot of clients who implement the same corporate governance practices that they have at HQ into China. It doesn't work. Okay. The dynamic of operating a business in China, you cannot be so strict and rigid as you may be in the Western world in your head office. So you're going to have to start off by creating flexible governance practices, evaluate and make sure somebody is looking over this and doing these internal audits, to then update them, that you find a balance between making your stakeholders happy, but being efficient at the same time so that you can be consistent and grow and scale in the market. Okay. Guys, that is the end of our presentation today. As usual, I would love to hear what your biggest takeaways were. In the meantime, any questions that you might have, put them into the chat box. If you are watching this on replay, then don't hesitate to reach out to me if you've got any questions at all. But I do love to hear what everybody's takeaway was and what they're going to implement. What are your next actions? So definitely don't hesitate to put that in the chat box. If you would like to get more advice on this specific topic about corporate administration for 2024, or if you've got any other pain points in relation to your China or Hong Kong business, I'll be sending out an email once the recording is uploaded to our YouTube channel. I'll be sending you a link to the YouTube channel as well, so you can watch it again or forward it to colleagues. And there'll be a link in that email to my diary where we can set up a free 30-minute discovery call to see how we can help. And if you are not aware, we also have our Thrive in China WeChat community. In order to participate in that community, you have to connect with me. My ID is here. It's KNCOLUCCIA, or scan my QR code, connect with me, type in Thrive in China, and I will add you into that community. All right. It's basically bringing these conversations into the chat, but it's also a way for business people within China to just communicate with each other. I, for example, have an F&B company who just posted their discounted prices if you want to order some of their specialities for Christmas and send it to clients. So it's just a great community to be in, where you can raise questions and start having an ecosystem for your Chinese operations. So that is the end of our 2023 roundtable. We are now on hiatus until the 10th of January. We have our topics outlined. We don't have the presentations done, so that's always why we want to know a little bit more about the backgrounds of our community. We're going to start off on the 10th of January with a presentation on China 2023, Rewind, Reflect, Reveal, Anticipating the Road Ahead for 2024. This presentation is going to be looking at overall the trends and challenges we've seen in 2023, overall generic view, and what we see as trends for 2024. So it's going to be a very statistically oriented presentation, but also providing our opinions and views on what we've noticed throughout the years. So we have new registration links for that. It's all up on our website. You can go to woodburnglobal.com/events and register for our events. We have now set up new registration links per event, as we know that a few people were a bit upset about being part of the whole community. Now you can just register for what you like and what you want to see. So stay tuned for that. And I want to thank everybody for participating within our community in 2023. We look forward to having you along for the ride for 2024. I wish everyone a very Merry Christmas, a very, very good start to 2024. And I hope you have wonderful, Happy New Year celebrations. Take care and goodbye.